Welcome back. This show is made up of numbers most of the time. We started adding the word of the day and it kind of brought some reality to it. But I'm so happy that finally we do have an episode that we're going to talk about the feelings that go around, especially retirement and other relationships around money. And I want to introduce Grace Dulude, who is a licensed therapist in East Greenwich. Grace, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Great. So, I think you and I have talked a little bit off air that the importance of not only being prepared number-wise for retirement, but really being prepared internally. And what I'd like to start out with is, people have this thought of retirement down the road, and they're trying to get there. They're trying to get there. They're trying to get there. They have an identity that, oh, this is my corporate job, or I own my own business. I've been involved in the community with the kids, and then they finally get to that point, and things may not be exactly what they think they are. Knowing that, what sort of things do you think are important for people to prepare themselves for retirement, activity-wise and even mentally?
I think it's important for people to just prior to retirement be able to make really mindful, conscious decisions of what it is that they're looking to create. So I know, like you're saying, in terms of like retirement and the financial piece of things.
Yeah.
But, what other things do they want to do with themselves now that they will have this extra time or space for themselves? Like, what other things will they like to do? So maybe whether it's leisure activities or hobbies or time, spend time with grandchildren or family members that maybe they didn't have time for. I think one of the things that when you propose the question that I'm really aware of working with people psychologically is that people are always looking for like that next thing. So then it's like retirement, and then when retirement happens, I'm going to be happy. And then a month in, I think you mentioned that at one point when we were talking, that there's the euphoria, and then there's the now what?
Right.
So it's really important that people are kind of really aware of those things prior to retirement, because having a purpose and having a connection to things that feel purposeful and passionate are the things that keep the vitality and the health and the wellness of each individual happy. So those things are really important to think about ahead of time.
Yeah, so when we're thinking about that ahead of time, let's say, for instance, I have a client that might be 5 years away, and they feel like, hey, from 5 years from now, I'm ready to go, and they're just focusing on that financial number. What are some of the things in their head that you think that they could really think about? And sometimes, to me, there's a lot of anxiety there. So even if they are prepared, the numbers-wise, they are a little anxious because they hear other people say, maybe it's not as great as I thought it was, and I don't have the identity because people looked up to me at work, and that's not there anymore. What are some things that maybe, people can think about when they're ready to approach that?
I would really encourage people to think about more of who they are, more of what they identify with, because I do think absolutely what you're saying is true. I think for, our work life is a big part of our day for so many years. And so we have so much identity consumed in that part of our lives. And so when we transition, there may be a grieving process because there are so many other things that we might identify with that we just never really considered. So it would be good to kind of think about those things, like what are the things that you would like to do that you haven't done, or how would you like to feel? I actually think that that's a really important thing. Sometimes people don't know what they want to do.
Yeah.
They may not know what that is. They know that maybe how they want to feel. So if they want to feel happier or feel more peaceful, like being able to start to kind of look at what are the things that I could do or engage in that would help facilitate that feeling, to feel happier, to feel more satisfied, to feel more joyful. So being able to start to kind of think of what are the other things about myself, because I'm not just, my identity at work. I have all these other facets of who I am, my relationships, my spirituality.
Do you think it would be advisable that maybe like as you get closer, and not necessarily you've just turned the switch and you're retired, start getting involved in some of those communities, activities, and things that maybe you didn't have time for before, but now you start to see that there is some space in your life, and before you get there, it's not just, 3 years to the day, today I will then get into meditating, start playing a little bit of maybe cricket or whatever it may be that they like, maybe starting to do that ahead of time. So when they do get in there, it's not as much of a you're just here and it's a 180. We actually, it's a little less of a transition. Do you think that can be helpful?
I feel like that could be very, very helpful and very, very valuable. And, a lot of times less is more. So it doesn't necessarily even have to be big changes. It could just be picking like one thing, in the course of 6 months that maybe someone wants to consider trying. And, maybe once a month engaging in an activity or something like that, whether it's a meditation retreat or whether it's learning a new hobby, just to be able to start to explore the things that they may enjoy or may find a lot of excitement about, because for some people it's going to be very different. So there are all these wonderful ways to just begin to pick one thing, make it simple, don't add too much pressure, because in my work, I find that people oftentimes take on too much.
Yeah.
And then they feel overwhelmed and end up doing nothing because they feel stuck. So, yeah, so it would be good
point.
To
I think that can happen,
that.
and that happens to me every day. But and I think it happens to all of us. We take on too much. So, let's not get into, but what would you have for the advice? And this has happened recently, where I had a client that they actually did enjoy their first 5 to 7 years of retirement. And now they kind of wanted to make this change of saying, I think I might want to go back to work, or I want to do this exercise, but I'm so much older now and I feel like I'm outdated, and I just feel like my purpose is gone. And they're trying to kind of get a repurpose for that. What are some ways they could kind of transition their mental state to move from being stuck? And again, you and I talked about this. It's not just about retirement, but if that's the scenario, from move to being stuck to getting yourself out there a little bit more, whether it's just the way you think about it or actually taking some actions.
Well, in that example that you gave, I'm such a proponent of anything is possible, no matter how old you are. I feel like there's always room for, advancing or expanding into who you're genuinely, meant to be. So whether someone's been in retirement for 6 or 7 years. So to hear that, yes, I feel like it would be a mindset. It would have to be an ability to switch the mind to say anything is possible, or even if I'm a little bit afraid to make a change, that it's still possible for me to do that. And mental resiliency is one of the things, especially as someone who teaches mindfulness training, is such an important facet in anything we do, because the ability to be resilient means to be flexible and objective. So it means to be willing to confront. And for most of us, when we're outside of our comfort zone, and in that example, there may be like a lot of limited thinking, a lot of negative thinking that gets in the way, and that's what creates the feeling stuck. So it would really be challenging some of the negative thoughts and being able to look at things objectively and be able to say, what do I want to do? Maybe I can take one step towards that. So for that person who's retired, 7 years and wants to try something, maybe they just take one step forward, again, not going so far ahead, but that one step will build the confidence to then take another step.
I think that's probably the best advice that we can all kind of take for ourselves, is it is about those small steps. I mean, a lot of times when I'm trying to get in shape or whatever, I need to lose 30 pounds. Well, let's try to lose 5 pounds, right? So, and I know that's just an example, but I think that's great advice. Moving on, one of the things that, especially during COVID comes up is that I think and I have the tough time all the time thinking about this, that someone that is now getting very close to the possible, mid 80 range, they're getting close, they start making, not because they've lost any mental capacity, but they start making some impulsive decisions. And, here's a quick one, and I don't, my own family, we've had issues with this, that, okay, during COVID, grandparents are saying, well, I don't know how much time I have left, so I just want to see my grandkids and be there with them. And just that mentality of, I don't have a lot of time, I'm either going to spend more money or do this or do that. How do you think you should treat that if you feel like you're getting close to that positioning of saying, listen, my time is limited here, I'm going to go spend all my money, I'm going to do all these crazy things maybe? I mean, I don't know how much that happens, but I just want to address that because it's always been kind of on my mind of clients that get to that point. What's a good piece of advice for them?
Good question. The first thing that came to my mind was balance is everything. So whether you're 40 or 80, I understand though what you're saying though, because there's that, as we age, we get, more aware of our mortality. And so we may want to make decisions, differently because we're looking at, the clock and the time. So what I would recommend is that, like, be able to create balance, meaning like identify the things that maybe you want to do with your money, like, and still being mindful of how much you may have many years, and so to be able to make sure that they also are in a position where they feel secure and they're taken care of, emotionally, mentally, physically.
Yeah.
So it would really be like, do the things you love and lead with your heart, and just do it objectively and do it mindfully, so that you're not making decisions that are maybe out of irrational thinking because you're feeling this way, and not being really thoughtful of the the longer term.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. As we kind of wrap things up here, are there any good rules of thumb? And again, for anybody, not necessarily, we've talked about retirement. It can be people that are, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever it is. When someone's trying to go through some transition, what do you think are some good rules of thumb as they try to approach that?
In terms of transitions, as most of us have a hard time at transition just because it's the unknown. And when we are ever in the unknown, we tend to want to, find certainty. So, what I would encourage, and what has been really helpful in my life, and I teach a lot of my clients, is to be able to do things with like focus on self-care and more.
Yep. Okay, so we have a little trouble right there, but we want to thank Grace very much for her assistance, and hopefully you guys get a lot out of that. And when we return, we're going to talk about Social Security. We'll be right back.